close it starts to end up on the brink. I tried so hard, but all these scars, they cut so deep I bleed. I fell so fast from heaven, it's like someone clipped my wings. Now I'm falling, and I can't see the ground. Can we stop this gravity? It keeps bringing me down. I can't breathe, and I don't wanna die. Can we stop this gravity? 'Cause I don't wanna say goodbye. I forgive the pain you gave to me so long ago. Sleepless nights I laid awake just begging to let go. I almost got to suicidal thoughts, but you stepped in. An angel sent from heaven showed me how to live again. Now I'm falling, and I can't see the ground. Can we stop this gravity? It keeps bringing me down. I can't breathe, and I don't wanna die. Can we stop this gravity? 'Cause I don't wanna say goodbye. My love, I'm gone. I need to be strong. The darkness had tried to swallow me. Some days I fall, but I hear your call. I pray I don't hit the ground. Gravity. 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 Gravity.
Baby, wait, I know that you're afraid, but it'll be okay if you just stay with me. And we can run from here, and we can disappear, and they won't find us where we are going, dear. So climb the greatest heights, jump down and have a fight. And that's all we'll ever like, but that can never change my mind. When it's good, it's amazing. When it's bad, it's uneasy. I wouldn't have it another way. There's no other way. When it hurts like this, ever like, ever like, ever like, ever like, ever like, ever like, when it hurts like this, ever like, ever like, ever like, ever like, when it hurts like this. We hold each other high, but we fall 1,000 times. But I'd never say goodbye or ever leave this stuff behind. When it's good, it's amazing. When it's bad, it's uneasy. I wouldn't have it another way. There's no other way. When it hurts like this, ever like, ever like, ever like, ever like, ever like, ever like, when it hurts like this, ever like, ever like, ever like, ever like, when it hurts like this.
And I've been chillin', watching the ocean with you. Baby up with a slow motion crew. And we up in our cloudlands when people change, but not us. And we just chillin', kicking it, kissed by the sun. Could be soaked to the skin in the mall soon. I know she got the good vibes when seasons change, but we're the same. Even if I lost all my money, the zero runs deep, honey. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. Even if my jokes aren't funny, my tongue tied up on it. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. 'Cause you got me holding, holding. 'Cause you got me holding. And I'll be running, possessed by a low, low voodoo. Fired up like a wolf on a full moon. And we're stuck in a la la land. The tides will turn without us. And I'll be killing time like I might be a cartoon. Take it in real life like haiku. I know we got the good vibes when pieces fall right into place. Even if I lost all my money, the zero runs deep, honey. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. Even if my jokes aren't funny, my tongue tied up on it. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. 'Cause you got me holding, holding. 'Cause you got me holding. Play me like a bass guitar, simmer down and mess me up, tripping like I'm Jimmy at Woodstock. Drive me around in your red Ford, shivers down my spinal cord. Oh, 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 oh. 'Cause you got me holding, holding. Even if
Here we go again. Trying hard, but you wanna be my friend. Ain't no place to hide, ain't no one to run to. Here we go again. Call my bluff, I'ma be here till the end. I'm the one you ride, I'm the one you ride to. If you don't wanna change, ain't no place to hide, ain't no one to run to. If you don't wanna change, I can help you out, 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 I can help you out. Here we go again. Time is up and I'm calling up my friends. Ain't no wonder why, ain't no one to ride to. Here we go again. Call me up and you wanna be my friend. I'm the one you ride, I'm the one you ride to. If you don't wanna change, ain't no place to hide, ain't no one to run to. If you don't wanna change, I can help you out, 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 I can help you out. Look, if you don't wanna change, ain't no place to hide, ain't no one to run to. If you don't wanna change, I can help you out, 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 I can help you out.
I just can't let you go. Lord knows that I've tried to. You said I was the only one. No one likes being lied to. You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now I wanna burn all the bridges between us. I can't focus, I can't forget. I've been thinking too much lately. I just need to clear my head. I just need to clear my head.
Wow. 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 Hi, everybody on YouTube. Let us know where you're listening from. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. Blue and White weekend has come and gone. Penn State has not one, not two, but 3 new commits to talk about. And Donnie Collins will be joining us again, friend of the show. And we'll wrap it with some fan questions. Very busy show. Let's get right into it, everybody. Glad you're here. In the shallow, shallow.
Great song.
I was just watching a TikTok that had that. All right, well.
Great movie, too.
I actually haven't seen the movie.
Oh, it's a tearjerker.
Is it?
Yes. Yeah, that's a very sad ending.
All righty. Well, let's get into it. Whoa. Excuse me. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I'm Corey Listoki. With me, almost not, but he is indeed here. Always. Shawn Kane. How you doing today, Shawn?
Busy time for me, Corey. Busy time, but thankfully I'll be just working one job and then this like another part-time job. But right now it's like I'm working 3 jobs, but doing well.
And we don't even consider this a job, so.
No, it's 2.5 jobs.
Oh.
But this is my passion in life, Penn State football.
Good.
With Corey Listoki.
I'm glad because we're not letting you out of it anytime soon. Welcome in Kyle Steffi from Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm watching on YouTube. So Doug.
I've been there.
I've been there too. Doug also on YouTube. Should I try his last name? Swoboda. 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 Well, hi Doug. Hope you're doing well as well. Busy show, Shawn. I say we don't cram in recruiting, so I just don't think we're gonna do it properly.
Okay.
So we're gonna move things around the show. We're just gonna talk blue and white here for another 18 minutes. I don't think it's gonna take that long because Donnie Collins has already been messaging me, so he might be coming on a smidgen before 8:30. We'll have Donnie Collins on to talk about blue and white as well, and then we will talk recruiting, and then we will talk film. Or we'll do film, and then we'll do recruiting, and then we'll finish with some fan questions. Does that sound like a game plan to you?
Sounds groovy. Let's do it.
Sweet. Well, Shawn, you were there in
Was.
Happy Valley. Rainy day, huh?
Yes. Yeah, it was rainy up until about 20 minutes before the game started. So my girlfriend did not like that part at all. She was straight up mean mugging for about an hour. We went to breakfast at the waffle shop, and then we drove up.
Did you get the blueberry muffin?
No, I still didn't get the elusive blueberry muffin.
Dude, seriously, you're disappointing me now. Like, you've got to get the grilled blueberry muffin. I can't believe you didn't get it. I'm actually upset with you.
I actually forgot that you suggested that once, and yeah, my bad. So, yeah, we went to waffle shop. And then around, I don't know, noonish? Yeah, it was around noon. We drove up, parked in the lots. Then she wanted to go to the bookstore to pick up some shirts. And then I met my buddy at a tailgate for only about a half hour. Then we walked up. But as we're at the end of meeting my friend at a tailgate, it stopped raining. And then it was actually pretty nice out. It was overcast and yeah. And the stadium, it was interesting that they kept the music playing all throughout, like while the plays were happening. But I was all right with it because the conspiracy theory online, I haven't seen anything definitive.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. Is that Franklin wanted to simulate crowd noise, but I'm not really sure how true that was. But overall, it was a good day. Very impressed by the defense. Offense had, a moment here and there, but overall, I was very, very impressed with the defense. And, there are some times that the offense could struggle in a game like this, and people could automatically say, well, it's because the defense was so good. But that's not necessarily always the case. Go back to the sanction years, and there were times where the offense was just not good. And it really didn't have much at all to do with what the defense was doing. It was that the offensive line just couldn't block them. Like, they just didn't match up. And I didn't really think that was the case this year. I think it was more of the defense is just very far ahead of the offense. But it's not that the offense is incompetent. It's not like they didn't know what they were doing. They were able to run plays. Aller had a couple nice throws. Bula had a couple nice throws. I thought the receivers were good. A little surprising to me that their run game, there was nothing huge that happened in the run game. But again, I don't even really – I know a lot of people, we're going to get into the film. I didn't think the offensive line played as badly as a lot of people seem to. I think a lot of it was the case of Olu being out and us moving some pieces around in the interior of the offensive line. And they're playing against one of the best defensive lines in the country, in all likelihood, especially at the defensive end spot. So you're not always going to look 100% sharp without your best left tackle playing against one of the best defensive end groups in the nation. So that's a general broad view of what happened in the game.
Yeah, I'm going to push back a little bit. 24/7's Josh Pate was at practice the couple days before the blue and white game, and he said that was even what they were seeing, even with Olu out there. And so I do agree with you as far as not being concerned or anything like that, but I would have liked to see them move the ball. And now they moved the ball pretty well. I mean, they had opportunities to score inside the 10 multiple trips and came away with 0 points. But still, I would have liked to see them move the ball better. I agree with you on the offensive line, though. They had lots of backups in very quickly. In the second half, there were guys I never even heard of before. No disrespect to them. But there were just a lot of people I never heard of. So you factor that into the defensive line that you're talking about. It makes sense. But still, early on, I would have liked to seen them have a little bit more success. And I'm going to be straight up honest with you, Shawn. I was disappointed with Bo Perbula. I thought we told this on the pod a lot of the times that we didn't think there was a quarterback battle between Drew Aller and Bo Perbula, but we had heard all these great things about how Bo was competing well, etc. I honestly didn't think he played that well. I know, and we said this before the game, that this wasn't going to be the best showcase of his talents because he can't really run and do the things he likes to do as far as scrambling goes. And he showed some good escapability at times, although I loved when Zane Durant chased him down. We'll get into that later. But I really thought he struggled to throw the football. He had one nice throw on a slant to Malik McClain on his first throw, and then it really wasn't great after that. So I'm a little bit disappointed there, Shawn.
Yeah, I didn't think it was one of Bo's best games. Well, we haven't really seen him, but I feel like he could play better than he did. There were things that I did like. I thought he hung in well. I thought his poise seemed good. He didn't have like a deer in the head. I don't think he really had a deer in the headlights moment. Like Jackson Smolik kind of did. We didn't see a whole lot of Jackson Smolik during the game, but he didn't really look ready for that. Doesn't mean he won't ever be, but at this particular time he didn't.
Yeah, before you run away from Smolik, I just want to say I was surprised he only came in for one series, and the snap was low. I don't think it was completely his fault, but I thought that was odd that he didn't go back in. But continue your thought.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It might just be that the two other guys are just very far ahead of him right now, which is fine. It's spring of his freshman year. Drew Aller was pretty bad last year when he played in spring, and he ended up making improvements between the spring and the fall, which is incredibly common. But yeah, Pabula had a pretty pass to Evans. One of the best passes of the day from either quarterback. And like I said, I liked his poise. He definitely, like Corey said, he had some escapability. But as far as just throwing the ball goes, yeah, he left a lot to be desired. I mean, honestly, I didn't think Allard played particularly great, especially in the first half. In the second half, he kind of got it together. But still, I mean, they only scored 10 total points in the spring game. And
mind you, the only reason they scored was because Storm Duck fell over on the one touchdown. Otherwise, they might not even score.
Yeah, and like the object of the game is to score points. So from that perspective, I'm not saying it wasn't great, and I wouldn't qualify what Drew Aller did as any amazing feat. He had a few nice throws. He also had some really bad throws. No interceptions for Aller. But yeah, I wasn't overly impressed with any of the quarterbacks, but I do think Aller had the best day.
Yeah, and before we have Donnie Collins join us in a second, I do want to just list off some notables just so we have them. I'm just going to run through these real quick. People that did not play. Linebacker Tyler Elsdon, who we hinted at wasn't going to on the last episode. Surprisingly to us, Dom DeLuca, which we hadn't heard anything, didn't play. Linebacker Dom DeLuca. Defensive tackle Keziah Izzard, we thought wasn't going to play. We mentioned on the last pod that Hakeem Beamon wasn't running with the starters, and he didn't play. Jalen Reed, safety, didn't play. Cornerback Zion Tracy, the early enrollee, did not play. Tight end Theo Johnson and tight end Tyler Warren had been banged up pretty much all spring. We knew those guys weren't going to play. And although he's been practicing fine, Olu Fashanu didn't play either. And Anthony Donka also didn't play. And I think that is all of, or at least most of them. One other thing, Shawn, I wanted to mention and make sure I get out before this, and I wanted your take on this before Donnie joins us, because I thought this was weird. And I'm curious if you also thought it was weird. Penn State, James Franklin announced 3 captains this week. And that is safety Keaton Ellis, left tackle Olu Fashanu, and linebacker Dom DeLuca. He's never done this before as far as announcing captains this early, especially before they get into fall camp. But also, it's usually a lot bigger of a deal. They vote on it. There's usually videos on Instagram of James Franklin calling their parent, and it's like a big ordeal. This, to me, seems out of character. This, to me, seems different. And I guess my question is to you, Shawn, is this something we should be concerned with? Is this a red flag? Like, hey, the leadership isn't where it needs to be, therefore I'm instilling leadership now because we got to get this figured out. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a concern. It depends on what your definition of red flag is. Because I don't think it's that we have a team full of bad character. I don't think that at all. I think they're just, like, if that was the case, then yeah, it would be a concern. But I think they're just looking for leaders. And it's very tough when you come from having a very senior-heavy leadership group and all the new guys are all kind of thrust in to leadership roles all of a sudden. Now, leadership, it's not something that gets put together in 3 months. It's something that, it's an everyday thing. It's keeping guys accountable with not just how they're practicing, but how they're eating, what their late night activities are, being on time for things. And that's stuff that just comes over time. And the guys doing that, the guys holding other people accountable, are probably the ones that are going to stick out to Franklin. And that's probably why Franklin just said, all right, these guys are my guys. And this is where we're going to start. And then as time goes on and we go into summer camp, that's when the rest of them will probably come into the fold. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely concerning. And a lot of times you don't know who your leaders are going to be until adversity hits. And adversity could be a loss. It could be a big injury. It could come in many forms. So we're going to hit adversity at some point this season. Hopefully it doesn't result in any losses. But at some point they're going to face adversity, and who's going to be there when the chips are down, and who's going to take command when we need it. And a lot of that is stuff we just don't know right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, Shawn. I am just straight up concerned because it is out of character. It is different. And to me, that is, hey, we've heard there's a lot of guys that are leading by example, but haven't necessarily found their voice yet. And to me, this is like, hey, we've got to establish that. Maybe it's just because they need to have that over the summer when the coaches aren't with them 24/7, but maybe it's just Franklin realizing that they need to have a big off season in order to set up. You can't slack now. You had a really good obvious end of the season. You won your last 7 of 8 games. You have a good winter workout session. You have a good spring practice. Everyone comes out healthy. You got to keep the foot on the gas and make it through the summer. And in order to do that, you got to have some good leadership. So will be interesting to see what kind of unfolds there from this 2023 group. I do want to go to YouTube. Kyle, I was just going to say, Kyle on YouTube had a point about offense and defense in blue and white, and he says mistakes on offense are highlighted more than defense. On offense, you run the wrong route, wrong block, and it can be catastrophic. On defense, you can run the wrong gap and still make the tackle.
Yeah, and that's true too. Like everything gets amplified on offense when you make a mistake. If you drop a pass, everybody in the stadium is going to be like, "Oh, this guy dropped a pass. This guy sucks." But if there is a misassignment, a missed gap assignment, that's a little harder to see. So the typical fan, or really just somebody who didn't see a highlight, might just be watching the game live, just didn't see it. So yeah, a lot of mistakes on offense do get overly emphasized. But again, I go back to the score, 10-0. So that's the biggest thing from that game. That's the biggest thing to take from that game in terms of who did better, the offense or the defense.
Well, now we'd like to welcome onto the show. And I know we're invisible right now. I'll get us fixed in a second, but I want to welcome friend of the pod, Donnie Collins, onto the show. How are you doing today, Donnie? Can you hear us okay? Hello?
Donnie?
Is there anybody out there looking for a party?
You there, Donnie?
I got you now.
Sweet.
I was wondering if you guys were talking to me or not, because then I was like, no, there's no way that they're just...
Sometimes we want to talk to you, sometimes we don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
No.
It's like my wife.
Shawn, you're like really huge. I'm going to like make you smaller, but welcome into the show, Donnie.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, I was just telling my girlfriend, Donnie, the guy that we have on the podcast tonight works right across the alleyway from us. So it's great to have you back.
Hopefully you weren't talking about like your drug dealer or something.
Yeah, not that guy. Question. Did you get Dom DeLuca sauce at Garrity's or not?
Not yet. I can't wait,
Not
though.
yet.
I've heard it's pretty good.
I've heard that too, and I definitely want to check it out. I think it's only, I don't know if they're holding it to one store or not, or like by where he's from, or.
I think the only place I know it is at the West Pittston one or wherever. I think it's West Pittston, but
West Pittston, yeah.
I've heard that's DeLuca country though, so it would make sense that the only way you can get that sauce is
every time Dom DeLuca gets mentioned, it is go buy his sauce, go buy his sauce. Someone needs to go get the sauce so we can have a taste test on the show and we can decide if it's NIL worthy or not, just to get it over with.
Yeah, I like all kinds of. I'm a pasta guy, so I kind of like all kinds of sauces, and as long as tomato sauces is my favorite. But yeah, as long as it, I'm sure it's going to be NIL worthy for me, but I don't know for the average person who won't eat just anything.
Well, I'm a picky sauce. I make my own homemade sauce, passed down generation to generation every Sunday. So I'd be very picky. I will not. One time my girlfriend bought, like, I think it was even Alfredo sauce. It wasn't even tomato sauce, but she bought like Alfredo sauce in a jar, and she tried to hide it from me in the laundry room. And I found it one day looking for something, and I was like, what the hell is this? So no, we are a no buy jar household. So I'll be very interested to see how it tastes.
Yeah, I prefer to make my own. Like I do my own, but like with the kids being as busy as they are and keeping us moving, and the work schedule and stuff like that, it is difficult to do the sauce the right way. So hopefully DeLuca's going to come through for us. It's on some easy dinner nights.
Now, well, you have to let us know and send us a picture of the sauce and everything, and give us a review while you're at it.
Yeah, I could do. I have to McGloin's beer and this guy's sauce. So I have to.
I did not know McGloin had beer.
I did not know that either.
Yeah, that his podcast was sponsored by I don't know if he's even still doing it, but it was sponsored by a microbrew or something like that, or a craft brew or whatever.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah.
We'll have to, maybe we can do like a taste testing on the podcast sometime.
Yeah, if we get a few more NIL sponsored meals here or things we can eat, I think that's a good idea.
We get his sauce, and then I know it's not obviously in Scranton, but we get Abdul Carter sponsored by some chicken place downtown State College, isn't he? I don't know. Something like that.
I think he picked one up, yeah.
So there's something there, and I feel like there's something else, but not off the top of my head. I feel like another big guy.
A lot of them have burgers at the field.
That's true. That's just a good excuse to go to the field.
You guys do. I still never been there. I do want to check that out.
Yeah, that's a disgrace you haven't been there. That place is delicious. So you haven't been to the field and you haven't had the blueberry muffin from the waffle shop yet. You're on a roll today.
Yep. 0 for 2.
Okay, Donnie. So we are talking blue and white, obviously. Just happened. What are your thoughts? If I just said, hey, what did you like? What did you not like off the top of your head? What stood out to you?
Oh, the defensive ends. Obviously, everyone's going to say that. But, even the white team defensive ends. And look, they clearly separated first team, second team. And the second team defensive ends are hard to handle for those first team tackles. And one of the things that really stood out to me that I thought was interesting was you could really have looked at that and said, oh, the offensive line didn't play well. And in years past, we might have. But I think we know a little better now that offensive line's pretty good. The Drew Shelton getting pushed back by Deni Dennis Sutton is not a Drew Shelton thing. That's how good Deni Dennis Sutton is. And Zariah Fisher had a great game. I really liked him. Vanover had his normal quiet dominance, I want to say. So they were pretty good behind even the two starters. And Chop was great again, as Adisa Isaac. But I really think that's what stood out to me is these guys are going to be able to get after the passer, and it kind of refocuses. You could talk about quarterbacks and running backs and the third receiver all you want. But this team's going to win the division if it wins the division because of Manny Diaz's defense and the way they like to play. And look, if they get after the quarterback and they have elite cornerbacks covering opposing receivers, that should work in the Big Ten. It should work in any conference. And I think that's just remind you that's where Penn State's strength is at those two positions on the defense. And that's to say nothing about how good they are at linebacker with Carter, who I thought in his limited action on Saturday played pretty well, did some Abdul Carter-like things.
I'm glad you kind of said that because I came out of it a little bit disappointed in Drew Shelton, especially when he was back at the left tackle position. But, I mean, Drew Shelton looked like a young left tackle when going against Deni Dennis Sutton. But you're right, we have a lot of games, to say, actually, Drew Shelton's, been able to hold his own in the Big Ten for the most part. And you're right, Deni Dennis Sutton just made him look like a young offensive tackle. So I'm glad you said that because that made me change my mind a little bit there. I also like what you said as far as refocusing on the defense and the defensive line specifically. We can talk about the wide receivers, and we can even talk about the quarterbacks. But realistically, I mean, this is a 10-win team as long as they can run the ball and play really good defense, right?
Yeah, they're as good as they were last year if they could play that kind of style where they're going to pound the ball. Where they could be better than that is, what does Aller give you? Is he able to push the ball down the field consistently? Are they able to get extra out of those receivers that they couldn't get last year because of either limitations in the offense and unwillingness to push the ball deep, or a lack of general skill at the positions that require that? But I think, yeah, you're right. They are going to win 10 games if they can just count on running the ball and playing on the offensive line like they did last year. And look, even the offense and their defense, and just in defense of the tackles, they didn't have Theo Johnson, didn't have Tyler Warren, and those two guys are a couple of pretty good blockers there who are going to help them out quite a bit. So I think that there were some reasons Dennis Sutton and Fisher and Vanover and Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac looked good. And most of them are because they are good. And it is true, too, at the same time, that Drew Shelton still is a young tackle. He still is learning. But I do think it shows you that Shelton looked really good last month of last season, looked really good in the Rose Bowl, and those guys had their way with him a little bit. So I think that kind of goes both ways. You can't completely – Drew Shelton didn't forget how to play tackle in 4 months, and I think that shows you just how gifted that position is.
Shawn, we're big Amin Vanover fans. We've talked about him more than a lot of other people do. What are your thoughts, Shawn?
Yeah, I love Amin Vanover. Like Cory said, just glue guy, always around the ball, motor never turns off. Really like him. Were you a little surprised, Donnie, that Penn State didn't run not Penn State, that the offense didn't run the ball better? Were you a little surprised by that, or they never even Singleton didn't have his patented long run and just didn't feel like it really got going?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I don't think they broke a big one. And this is really what they were last year, 3 yards at a time, and then Nick brings a big play and they blow it open, and then you got to defend that. And it was really, the running game got good once Nick broke a big play, and then you'd throw Katron Allen in there, and it was a little different feel, and you had defenses off balance a little bit. But yeah, I was kind of surprised that big run never came. And in defense, there was a couple of plays, and I think you guys had it on because I saw one of these two plays on live, and I thought, well, that was a heck of a play, because I thought Singleton had a chance to break a big play to the outside, and KJ Winston came up and popped him. And I thought that those are the kind of plays where, that potentially he makes one cornerback miss and he's gone for 10 or 15, and it's a little different. But Winston was able to get in there and stop, I think, Allen once and Nick the other time. So I think that's kind of impressive to me, that the safeties without Jair Brown were able to prevent some of the bigger runs for those two guys. But really, outside of those two plays, and they weren't going to be 80-yard runs like you saw in the Rose Bowl. But yeah, I think those. I don't think there was really even a close play that they broke, and that maybe that's what they were showing you, and what the defense was giving, and they see those two guys every day, so they know kind of what they can do and how to control it a little bit. But yeah, I was surprised that when you look at the numbers, Singleton and Allen looked kind of pedestrian.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, because it wasn't like watching the sanction year spring games where they were getting blown up before they even got to the line of scrimmage. And also, I want to ask, do you feel better about the receivers after watching that? Because I did. I feel like Omari Evans, this guy's a gamer, and Dante Cephas isn't even there yet.
Yeah, I don't know what I thought about the receivers all spring, because Franklin kept saying the third receiver, and Dante Cephas isn't on campus yet. I mean, clearly he's the third receiver. If you're counting Trey Wallace and you're counting Keandre, Keandre needs to get either, number one, the ball more, because he's wide open. He's the openest receiver I've ever seen who doesn't get the ball when he's open. And then you have if you're counting him and Trey Wallace with Cephas, that's three guys. So I was really, they really have three guys, but I was higher on Evans, I think, than most people were, because his speed is so, and it's such elite speed. and such a big game-changing factor. And what I noticed in this game more than anything is clearly the guy they wanted to be the quote-unquote third guy this spring was Evans, because they ran a lot of plays just to get him the ball. They zeroed in on him. There was a lot of motion, getting the ball to Evans, letting him make a play in space, and that kind of got him going. So I thought he could have that kind of game, and I think he's going to be that kind of player, whether it's this year or next year. But he's got game-breaking speed, and he's still there's still a lot of little things about the position he's got to learn. But I think it's the one position where you could learn the little things later and make a couple of plays here and there and get yourself active in the offense. I think he's going to be, if you want to call it the fourth receiver, that doesn't surprise me. But I think the most encouraging thing about the receivers and what if I'm looking at that position alone and saying that I came out of that game thinking for Penn State they're going to be okay there was Saunders, because I thought he made a couple of really tough catches and when Drew made a major league throw, it was to Saunders, and he was able. You could tell there's a rapport there with them going back to their high school days. And that catch he made a catch. Drew's best throw was the one right before the sidearm throw that everybody was talking about, because he had a couple of hands in his face and he was able to zip a pass right in between two defenders, and Saunders went up and caught it. And that to me was the best offensive play of the game, because that's a big league throw, number one, and a big league catch from a guy you didn't expect to see that from after last season. So I think there's a lot of potential for Saunders to be in that mix as well. So yeah, I think when you look at that group, there's some work that needs to be done there. I think they have some guys who they like that aren't quite ready. But and I thought actually McLean played well too. He was going against those first team cornerbacks and caught a couple of balls in front of. I know he caught one in front of Kalen King. So I think he played okay, but I think he's more of a red zone guy. But I think Saunders is a guy who could emerge this year. But Evans is clearly a guy they want to succeed this year and be part of the offense. And I think he showed enough in the blue-white game for, number one, him to have confidence, and number two, for the team to have confidence in him.
Yeah, you brought up some really good points there. Speed fixes a lot of things. You might not have the offense 100% down yet. You might not, have your route running 100%, but if you can make up for it with your speed, it can get you on the field a lot faster. So 100% agree there with Amari Evans. He's kind of the guy to, we said before the blue and white game, well, he was the only freshman that really played last year. So he was kind of our pick to be the guy that steps up and performs in a blue and white game. And he was. I'm curious. There's still rumblings even after the game. James Franklin said that they were still looking potentially maybe to go back to the portal for maybe some more competition. I mean, to me, that's surprising, right? You took Dante Cephas, you took Malik McLean. Does that mean he doesn't think they have enough, or do you think that's just kind of noise at this point?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think he'd like to get somebody that's established. And these coaches, when they go into a season like this, and let's face it, James thinks they could win. And he might be one or two players away from being sure he can win. And maybe that's what he needs at that position. Because Evans he's going to be a sophomore. He probably shouldn't have played as much as he did last year, but they needed that speed on the field. They didn't have a whole heck of a lot of speed at receiver last year. So I think they went and got the guys out of the portal that they felt a 6'4" guy who's got a couple of years of eligibility left. You don't find those guys too often. And I think he needed Cephas. Cephas' speed is something that was missing. So you add that. He's a veteran guy. So I think if Franklin, though, and he kind of said this after the game, that they're not going to turn down a talented player at any position. So if he finds a guy with a couple of years of eligibility who could play receiver, and look, the portal's going to be flooded with these guys in a little bit. This is just the beginning of this. So he might find a guy who you can't pass up, and I think he'd do that at a receiver. I think he'd take a guy, because you're really rolling the dice with a fourth guy and a fifth guy who don't have any. I want to say Omari Evans doesn't have meaningful experiences. Is not accurate. He's played a lot, but he hasn't had meaningful success yet to that degree outside of the blue-white game. He's had moments, but not sustained success. I think they're looking for that kind of consistency, and they might find it. Am I sitting here thinking any day now they're going to pull a receiver out of the portal? No. but I think they would not turn down a good receiver either at the same time.
Since you brought him up, I want to talk Drew Aller, because obviously we had many, many debates about Sean Clifford versus Drew Aller, and we're not going to go down that road tonight, although Sean Clifford just visited the Eagles, Sean, just saying. But not to overreact, how are you feeling about Drew Aller right now? Do you think he's still figuring out the groove? I mean, obviously we saw the flashes and potential. There's a couple throws that looked really good. The one throw that you mentioned to Caden Saunders over the middle, I think Drew Shelton was hitting him because Denai Dennis Sutton was backing him up into Drew. But he made some great throws, but he also lacked some consistency. Do you still feel like, and I don't know if you ever felt this way, but that he could be that 5-star, like, top 5, top 10 pick that leads Penn State to glory? Or do you have some question marks right now as we head into the summer?
I think Drew Aller is going to be Dan Marino someday.
Sean would
100%.
really like that.
100%. I mean, I've seen him up close. The ball comes out of his hand differently. He spins it differently. And I loved Cliff. I know you guys and I were on the same page with Cliff. Cliff should have been the quarterback last year. They played that exactly the way they should have. And I think Cliff is a much better quarterback, and time's going to tell a much more positive story of Cliff's Penn State career than perception does right now. But Aller is way more talented a quarterback. And I know that's not the question, but I think he's going to be able to put it all together. He played exactly the game I thought he was going to in the blue-white game. I thought there was going to be moments where he didn't look great because that defense is going to make it look tough on him. And there was going to be moments where he showed you he could step up in the pocket, zip a throw in there, and you're just going to be like, wow. And I don't know if there was enough of those moments, especially, I mean, the game was 10-0. So it's not like there was a lot of scoring. There's not a whole lot of big moments. He missed the touchdown, though, to Katron. I don't think he'll ever miss that throw again. But he once he got into a groove, I think in the second half, he started to look really comfortable back there to me. But I think the one thing that stood out to me with him is that the blue-white game is always one of these things where you can make that look for your quarterback however you want it to look. If you're Mike Yurcich or James Franklin, you could set that up however you want to make that guy look successful. And they sent the defense after him. So that tells me, number one, they don't think he's going to get rattled. Number two, he's confident. And number three, he could handle it. So I really thought he got better as the game went on. If he didn't get better as the game went on, maybe you'd be like, oh, could he do it this year? But I think as the season nears, he's going to be a better quarterback. I think as the season progresses, he's going to be a better quarterback. And I think he's going to be one of the greats in Penn State history. And if he's not, there's going to be a lot of questions. But I think he's got every tool. And he just strikes me as a guy who is going to be good at it and knows he's good at it and doesn't have to flaunt it. And people say, oh, he's quiet. He's going to be a quiet leader. I think he's going to be a very vocal guy as time goes on. He's just a young guy right now, and he's got a lot of developing to do, but he's got so much skill. I really love his game, and his arm is absolutely elite. And I don't say he's going to be Dan Marino lightly, because that's not fair to him. But he's going to have that skill set. Now, could he develop it and become a player this year that leads them where they want to go? I don't know. But I think next year he's exactly the quarterback you want for Penn State. And there's no I don't see anything behind him or anybody out of the portal who's going to be as good as him coming out in the next couple of years.
Wow, Dan Marino.
How you like that, Sean?
As a Dolphins fan, I mean, that speaks volumes to me.
And I'm putting Dan Marino in the top 5 all time.
Oh,
no worse than the top 5.
Yeah, if he won a couple Super Bowls.
I'm not saying Drew Aller is going to be top 5 all time. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
He could be that. He could be good.
Yeah, my ears perk right up when you say Dan Marino, my favorite Pitt Panther ever. So one of the things Corey and I were discussing about Aller, and I think you would probably share this opinion, is like his issues that he had in the game, and in general, what we saw from Drew Aller sometimes last year was he will be a tad inaccurate at times. Now he's not like as inaccurate as Rob Bolden, for example. But you think a lot of these problems are correctable that he has with accuracy, correct?
Yes. Yeah, what he's doing to me is he's throwing the ball as hard as he can every time. He knows he can make tough throws, so he's trying to make tough throws. Even when they're easy throws, he's trying to make tough throws. And that's something that you grow out of. That's something when you're gifted, you could do it. And like you see look at his high school tape. Some of the throws he made were unreal. The arm angles, the no-look throws. They don't have to be that hard. It's not that difficult sometimes. He makes it that way, I think, to challenge himself. There was a play near the goal line when they were going in, I think it was in the second half, where he had somebody wide open. Would have set himself up for like a 4th and 2 or something like that. But he throws into triple coverage in the end zone. In the game, you take the short throw. And I think I even said on Twitter, this is going to be really good tape for him because he's going to see the easy plays he passed up. And once he learns, hey, I just got to take the easy play, make that easy throw, get the wide open guy, and get out of here, get myself in a better down and distance, he's going to be tremendous because you're going to have to honor the deep throw with him at all times because he can make that throw. I'd rather the guy who can make the deep throw and has to work on the mid-range throws or the short throws than the guy who hits the short throws and you don't have to worry about him deep because then they're just going to pinch him in. Defenses could defend that. You can't defend the guy who could hit the deep pass as often as Aller probably could. And I'm sure he's more accurate right now on the deep throws than he is on the underneath ones because he's zipping everything in through double coverage. He's doing things like that too consistently is not the word. Too often, I guess. He's taking the more difficult throw. But the more he plays, the more film he watches as the starter, and the more he gets to work with Yurcich, I think he's going to see that there's some easier plays out there for him to get and understand. The bigger thing there is understanding the value of taking that 5-yard play when it's there instead of shooting for taking the big risk on the 20-yarder. But because that 20-yarder is going to be there if you get enough of those 5-yarders. I think he's going to be a guy who really learns from being the starter because there's a lot you can do when you're the number one guy and you have to learn it quick. And he's very intelligent. I think he's going to be one of those guys who gets it pretty quick.
2 things I want to reiterate. First one being, I like what you said about, and I really want the listeners to remember this. I think it's a really good point. I like that you said that James Franklin and company could have made this game easier for him if they wanted to. I think that's a really good point. Manny Diaz, he didn't show the Prowler package specifically, but he brought Kalen King on a blitz. He let Abdul Carter go up against Golden Israel Achumba a couple times. I mean, it was not easy for Drew Aller back there. So I think that's a really good point is they could have made this a highlight day for Drew Aller if they wanted to, and they kind of chose not to, or at least put him in that position. So I think that's the first good point. And the second good point, Josh Pate from 24/7 Sports got a chance to speak with Drew Aller, and the biggest thing he had coming out of that was that Drew is never going to be in the headlines for being a bad guy. He's very much I don't know what else to do besides football and go home and play video games. So I think that's an important part of his development too. It doesn't seem like a guy who's going to get distracted by a lot of other things. And Shawn, I mean, I don't know Dan Marino level vibes yet, but I'm sure you're giddy about that. I want to move to the defense because I think you're right, Donnie, that kind of, if they can be as good or even better than last year, I think you're looking at a really, really good season for Penn State, regardless of the quarterback, regardless of the wide receiver position. And I want to start with everyone wants to talk about right now, and that's defensive tackle. I said this last week. Everyone wants to harp on defensive tackle like there aren't people there that haven't played. But you've got 6 guys that have played a respectable amount of football. And yet I think it kind of comes back to the Michigan game and how people just think we are absolutely bodied, even though I still think it was more of a gap issue than anything else. How do you feel about defensive tackle right now? Franklin said that they're still looking for one if they're out there. But are you as concerned as everyone else?
No, I think I would take one if I'm them and just get a big body in there. I'm not saying not like James, like after the Michigan game. I mean, we need 300 320-pound guy. You don't. You just need to play smart. And that was a gap responsibility issue because they fixed it and they were fine the rest of the season. They were one of the better run defenses before that and after it. And Michigan found one thing, and congratulations to Michigan. But yeah, I think they need an extra guy there, but they've got a lot of guys who've played. I mean, you guys talk about Vanover a lot, and I feel the same way about Vanover. I think he was a guy that nobody talks about who played well last year, but the defensive tackle version of him is Izzard, because Izzard went in when he got off whatever, held him out for the first month or whatever, and I thought he played a lot better than he did in 2021. So I think he took the next step. I like Elise. Elise is I think there's some pass rush to him that we haven't seen yet, but a good run stopper. Those two guys are fine there. Durant, there's something to Durant. They don't talk about him as as this elite kind of strange talent that he is. A little bit of a smaller, twitchier guy, but without reason. But he's been a good player. He does something every time you see him. I kind of like Vandenberg more than a lot of people do, because I think he's got a pretty good motor, and for a second line or third line defensive tackle, I think Vandenberg is fine. They have a lot of guys that have played a little bit and are good enough, I think, to kind of just play the role and stuff the run and be gap accountable and do all the things that they need to do. And I think it showed. I thought they played fine there on Saturday. I don't think there was they're part of the reason that the running game didn't get going too. So, yeah, but James sees them in practice every day. So, I think if he can find someone better, that might be just someone where he could find something better than what he's got. He's going to use it. But I think if you look at it, Beeman's the other guy everyone talks about. But they have a couple of guys like Beeman. I think they'd like to get a bigger guy, obvious rundowns, bring that guy in and let him go after it. But they really kind of want to play the situations where they did years ago, where you're running those guys out there in waves. Starters go in next, play a couple of series, and they put the backups in. Then if you need a blow on the drive, get the two guys, get the third stringers out there. I don't know if they're three teams deep there. At least not the way James wants, but I think they're pretty good there. I think they have a shot to be adequate, not at worst. I think but they do have some ability to be dynamic there, and I think that'll show it at times during the season, especially with Durant. I think there's something with Durant.
I don't know, Shawn. Who was it Landon Tangwall that was interviewed last week? Somebody was interviewed last week, and they're asked about the defensive tackles. And about Hakeem Beamon, someone said that they reminded him of Aaron Donald. And I was thinking back to what James Franklin said in the Michigan game. And I was like, man, do they not remember anything about not wanting to be like Aaron Donald all the time? That had me rolling for a long time.
It makes me wonder if it was like an inside joke between them, like, oh, let's bring this up again and just kind of troll a little bit.
There's only one Aaron Donald. I think that was James's point. There's only one of those guys, but everybody wants to be him. And we're all twitchy 280-pound guys. But yeah, I think when he said that, there was no doubt about who he was, the kind of guys who he was talking about. It wasn't PJ Mustafer at 320 pounds. It was everybody else is kind of around the 300-pound mark. But I don't think that had anything to do with why they lost to Michigan. I think it was a total scheme thing. And I think I think they have a chance to be pretty good against the run this year, because even with nobody at that size, but Beeman, to me, Beeman's interesting because to me, he's not a defensive tackle. He's more of a bigger end. But I don't know. I like Beeman, but you have to play a little bit differently when he's in.
But I think that's
you
how
get another guy, you don't have to do that.
And to a certain degree, I think that's how Manny Diaz wants to play 90% of the time, right? I mean, they like slanting and all that good stuff anyway. But you're right, against Michigan on a 3rd and 1, you're kind of feel like you're at a disadvantage. Shawn, defensive questions for Mr. Donnie.
Yeah, so my favorite guy in last year's recruiting class was Tony Rojas. Mm-hmm. And I was expecting him maybe not to play a ton this year, might get in a little bit, but it wouldn't have shocked me at all if he kept his red shirt. I don't think he can keep a red shirt on him. I think he's got to play, and he looked bigger than I thought he would be. Just in person too. Being there, I was like, he looks big enough to play. Like, I really was less concerned about his size after seeing him. What were your impressions from Rojas during the Blue White game and all spring?
I mean, when you get 9 tackles in the Blue White game and you were in high school 3 months ago, that to me is impressive. I don't care. I mean, I don't care what size you are, but I think he was on the Creamery ice cream plan, the 500 calorie Creamery ice creams. He must have been that guy, because he didn't look 190 to me. He's probably about 220, and I think that's going to be an interesting position battle this year. I think that's quietly one of the deeper positions on the team is that Sam linebacker spot, where you could drop Winston in there if you really wanted to on pass downs. But you got DeLuca, who could compete there for playing time. And you got now Rojas is going to fit in there. I thought Rojas would not redshirt this year, because I thought that's a valuable special teams guy, and that he would be somebody who I thought would be crazy and to put in that spot, and you'd have some really big hits on specials. I just kind of saw him as that, just watching his tape, but now I think he can compete for that role, and I think they like him enough, especially after some kids just know how to play, and they're born with that knowledge of how to do it. And I think Rojas is kind of like that. If you look at his high school career, that kid played every down and touched the ball every play. He made every tackle and carried the ball every time. He's one of those really special athletes that I don't think you can deny him. And last year I thought with Carter, you heard a lot about, he's talented, athletic, the closing speed, all that. And then you see it and you're like, they're not going to be able to keep this guy off the field. I think Rojas is going to be that player this year for them, because he's got a lot of skill. And I thought Tamir Robinson played okay, but Rojas you could argue he was the best of the linebackers who were on the field. He's done a grade higher than anybody anyway, and that's impressive to me for somebody who obviously has been in the program for 14 practices.
Yeah, and he only played mostly defensive end when he was in high school too. So as far as dropping back, he looked like 100% comfortable in space, which I was really impressed with. Tamir Robinson, you brought up, he tweeted just recently that was his first game he'd suited up for like, I think it was over a year and a half. Mm-hmm. I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I thought Tamir Robinson played a lot better. I mean, you could tell that he was still getting comfortable, but I mean, he was at the end of the game, he was actually, figuring out where he was supposed to be and making a couple pretty big important tackles. So, I mean, he was a guy I was like, he's a year away for sure. And now I feel like even Tamir Robinson's going to probably play his 4 games potentially at Mike.
Yeah, I thought he would be a guy who played a lot. Those middle linebackers last year, I thought they'd both developed. I thought Elston was okay. He was steady. He was what you would expect. I thought Kobe King came in there and did okay, but Tamir Robinson's a more athletic player. So, who's going to win the day at the end as the season goes on. And I thought Tamir Robinson might go in there and fight for some playing time, especially if he got off to a good start. Now, you don't know how healthy he is, but he looked okay. I mean, after missing the season. So I think he'll go out there, and I don't know if he'll start, and who knows how much he's going to play, but he's going to be a pain in the butt for the coaches, because he's going to fight and trying to move up the depth chart that doesn't exist in anybody's minds but the coaches. But yeah, I could see him and Rojas being 2 guys, because they didn't quit. They were high motor guys. There was a play Rojas was in it was in Catron's face at the end of the game, at the end of the play. And I thought there was a chippier Blue White game than I've seen in the past, because I thought there was a play where Rojas was kind of talking to Catron Allen, and I thought, wow, this guy is going to be a real pain in the butt for opponents. They're going to hate playing this guy, because he's good and he knows it, and he just likes doing it. He likes getting his nose in the mix. And I think Robinson's kind of the same way.
Yeah, and another guy that Cory and I both think highly of is KJ Winston. And he really looked the part. And actually, I was looking for him we discussed him before the Blue White game as a potential guy who nobody's really talking about, who could have a big game, and I thought he did. I mean, am I crazy for taking this guy as a chance to start? Like, I am that impressed by him.
Yeah, I think he has a chance to start. I think he's probably the more dynamic player of him and the two guys who probably will start with is Wheatley and Jalen Reed. But I think he's better than those two guys. I think he's potentially better. And I'll tell you this much: of those three guys, he's the one who plays most like Jair Brown. So if you want that kind of guy, he's going to have to be the guy who goes out there. And I think he could play a little bit of linebacker. I think he's a smart player. I think the years of special teams work and helped him. And I think he can go out, and I don't think he's going to play defensive line this year and rush from the edge. But I think he's the most versatile guy of those three. And if I were Penn State, I'd really look at Winston and Wheatley, because Wheatley, the thing you can't teach with Wheatley is the ball finds him. So the ball's always around this guy. He has a knack for turning it over. So I think I'd have him out there, and that's no knock on Jalen Reed. I think he's a really good player, and he's solid, and I think he's going to play a lot, and he probably will end up starting. But Winston's the guy who's going to really force his way into that lineup. And every time he goes out there, he looks really good. And I thought there were some times on Saturday working his way through traffic where he made a stop that I didn't think he was going to get.
Yeah, Abdul Carter's highly raves about him too, and that just makes you think, if he's getting that sort of respect from one of the best players on the defense, that means something to me. I'd be interested to see what they do at safety. It's a good problem to have when you feel really good about 4 or 5 of those guys. And I agree with you. I mean, there's a Katron Allen, KJ Winston collision. There was the play where Katron Allen tried to hurdle over true freshman Elliott Washington, and Washington caught him. There was the big hit by Johnny Dixon on Liam Clifford that I'm pretty sure Pabula got him killed. There was multiple massive collisions throughout.
And a body slam on Kalen King. I thought that was going to be something that they addressed after the game. They really didn't.
No, that was fantastic. I had that one clipped as well. And then even at the end, like the last, or I guess the second to last play, or it might have been the last play or play that really mattered when Flowers and I can't remember who the receiver was that caught it, and they collided right at the 2-yard line there. Number 12, Ivy.
Yeah.
Even that, to the very end, they were scrapping for every yard there. So I thought that was really cool to see between, two guys that are trying to battle for. And Flowers is another guy who I just don't see how he gets playing time, but I think there's probably some way where he deserves playing time. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be, especially in the spring here where, I know they have UMass later in the year, but I mean, if it's anything like last year, they saw an insane amount of guys get playing time. And it's like a who's who trying to figure out who's all in the field because they got so many guys reps. So I'm expecting something similar this year.
Yeah, they have so much depth now at certain positions. But Franklin said a couple of things I thought were interesting throughout the spring that nobody else really caught. And one of them is after the game, and he said, where we know we're really good, we were really good on Saturday. And so there's some positions out there he knows he's really deep, and they were really good at safety. They were really good at defensive end. They were really good at certain spots on offense. I thought they know they're good at the top 2 running backs, and they're going to get pots. So it's they're going to be okay there. But I think on defense they're so deep. You could play some of those 3rd string guys, and because Flowers, that's a guy I really like. I liked him as one of my favorite players in the recruiting class. I saw him in high school. He's got a lot of skill, and nobody talks about him. He's if you throw Mekhi Flowers out there, you're going to get a good player. So, and I think there's a lot of spots there now, cornerback, obviously, where you're a couple of injuries away from Cam Miller, but Cam Miller's a good player. So there's a lot of guys like that who aren't going to play this year much by design, but they're going to be outstanding football players going forward. And we saw some of them in the blue-white game. I don't know if chippy was the right word to use, but competitive. It was ultra competitive.
Probably the most competitive spring practice I'd seen. I got to ask you about special teams before we let you get out of here.
I was hoping you would.
punting, kicking, kickoff specialists all seem to be kind of a mess. Punting, especially. I think Franklin said something afterwards, like nobody was even going after them, and they still averaged, I think, like 30-something yards per punt, something, or 38 maybe. That doesn't seem to be great. And you have two guys on scholarship there in Paqueta and Tompkins. And then kicker, Xander Sahadak didn't even try a field goal. So I'm just kind of, would hate if this season is what Penn State fans really want it to be, and it gets spoiled by special teams. But as of April 19th, Shawn, I think you threw up the red flag last week, and I'm right there with you. I'm very much concerned right now with the state of the special teams.
Yeah, I think you're looking for a guy who could kick off. Number one, Jordan Stout was such a weapon that it was going to be impossible to replace. And then I think they got a little bit lucky because Pinniger was okay. He wasn't near the percentages of touchbacks that Stout was the year before, but last year he was okay on the touchbacks. I don't think they're going to get near Pinniger's percentage from what I've seen this year. The Sahadak had the kickoffs, and they were short. He wasn't putting them in the end zone, but you could live with that if you cover well, and I think they have a chance to cover well. But you can't live with this as the punts. And you look at the numbers and look at the box score. And Riley Thompson had him for a 62-yard punt, and I don't remember it. So I'm sure it happened. Maybe I wasn't looking. Sometimes the music starts at Beaver Stadium, and I go on, like, I think, the game's over. But then they were playing music the whole time. So I think maybe I just wasn't paying attention and that happened. But that punt, if that happened, okay, that's your punter. But Paqueta can't be your punter. You can't run that kid out there. He had a 20-yard punt against no coverage. And here's how bad the punting was. James brought it up. Nobody asked him. So after the game, James kind of ranted about it and how bad it was. And it wasn't like even on anybody's radar. He mentioned it. He threw it out there. So that's really bothering him for that to come out. When you're averaging 38 yards a punt in the blue-white, I think it might have been 36. But you have a 20-yarder and you have a 25-yard. You had some bad punts in that game that have no chance of being returned or blocked. And maybe that has something to do with it because it's so different. But I think Paqueta is a guy who you look at it, you want that to be a real competition with him and the transfer kid. But I don't know if it is right now. I can't imagine it is if unless something crazy happened to the kid in that game. But that wasn't at all what I was expecting from Paqueta. But the other thing is that I think Falcons hit the field goal. So for him to get the try there, it tells you there's not really a competition there because Sahadak didn't get the try. Maybe there were some other opportunities to do it. I thought there was one other point where they might kick the field goal just to do it, and they didn't. So I don't know. Falcons, I think, is going to be the kicker, but you have a big gaping hole at kickoff guy, and I don't know what you're doing at punter if the Florida Atlantic kid or wherever he's from isn't going to be able to handle that. And I think there's some mysteries involved here. But you're right. That's the thing with Penn State, and it's probably this to a degree with every other team that's on the verge of being a top 4 team, is there's always something that's not working. You're always weak in a spot you can't be weak. And this year might be special teams. And they've been so good on special teams in recent years that you're right. It would be a shame if that's what held them back.
Yeah, Paqueta was from the same school as Gillikin, if I remember correctly, too. So, you don't really want to see that. And I think maybe that first punt was the one that got considered 62 yards. I think that one may have bounced and eventually went out of bounds. I'm not sure if I remember exactly.
One of them on that one, yeah.
One of them wasn't fielded, and it might have rolled far enough where it was 62. But I agree. And Shawn, we said this. I mean, going into last year, when they kept saying that the competition was so close between Xander Zahadak and Jake Pinniger, I mean, Pinniger proved us wrong, all things considered, but we were very worried about Pinniger going into the season, and he seemed to be okay. But then that made us wonder, like, okay, if Jake Pinniger is more consistent than Xander Zahadak, then what are we getting with Xander Zahadak here? And Shawn, right now, I mean, are you as worried as me and Donnie?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and at least Pinniger was a known commodity somewhat. We knew he was going to be inconsistent. If you're looking for a guy who's going to make 98% of his field goals, he's not for real. I mean, it's just not going to be who he's going to be. But he wasn't putrid by any stretch. And out of conference, he had a couple hiccups, but in conference, he was perfect to the Michigan State game. So, I mean, as far as a college kicker goes, you can't really ask for much more than that. And I agree with you. And Donnie, one of the things we say a lot on here is Franklin in press conferences always, I don't know, maybe year in the room or on Zoom. Does he seem tougher on special teams guys than he is everybody else? It just seems like he's always very blunt about the special teams guys. So do you think that has a role in him bringing up the punting situation?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I think I think he assumes nobody's going to bring it up. Nobody's going to talk about special teams because it's kind of the ignored part of the game, and he wants to make sure that they're talked about, because he did talk about Pinniger a lot last year, especially when Pinniger was really hitting the ball well on the kickoffs. He wanted that known that, hey, he's playing pretty well. So I think when they're doing well, he brings that up too. But there's that game, there was no excuse for what happened. It's just a strange. I think it's just one of those deals where you had a guy who had a chance to really win a job and completely choked in front of a lot of people, and maybe it just wasn't his scene. Now you're gonna look at that and say, well, is that the guy you want punting for you? I don't know if it is, but I think Gillikin always said he was as good a prospect as he'd ever seen, and they went to the same high school, and Paqueta, I think, was the number one punter in the country. So I think there's a lot more to him than we saw. But I was kind of surprised. It was a red flag to me about what they thought they had when they went out and gave a scholarship to a kicker. So out of the portal. So I understand you want to create competition. I understand you want to do a lot of things. You want to have a mentor in there, but to a certain degree, you're doing it because you don't believe what you have is maybe necessarily good enough. And I think it's fair to say after the spring game that they were right to do that, and that they might have to do it again.
Interesting. Well, that'd be something to keep an eye on here. I got two questions for you before I let you get out of here. Number one, we just talked about it a little bit before you came on. Leadership. I thought it was a little bit weird that Franklin went ahead and anointed a couple captains. That usually not how they do things. Are you concerned about leadership as we head into the summer?
No. Leadership develops, and leadership is what it is. And what they have, and I think where Franklin is coming from on this, and I did think it was weird, not weird's not maybe the word, but I think it was different that he mentioned last week that they might name captains, and then they went out and named captains pretty much immediately. And there were three guys I think you would figure on offense, defense, and special teams that they would make sure were captains. But that's clearly the type of leadership Franklin wants. But leadership is, in one way, is something that develops on its own. And when you have younger players, it's unpredictable. So I think Franklin wants the kind of leadership he wants out there. And however it's going to go moving forward, it's going to go. But you have to have a couple of guys there who you kind of understand what they're all about. And that's, DeLuca and Olu and Keaton Ellis. They're their steady eddies that they know that they're going to be able to report to the coaches, say what's going on, that the team will respect them. But I think if you left it to its own devices to develop, who knows what goes on. And I'm not saying it's bad, but your best players are sophomores, and you need to find a way for sophomores to be led by seniors when everyone knows the sophomores are better than the seniors.
That's a good point. It's interesting. It's going to be fascinating to watch to see, who else gets voted as captains. You can probably make some guesses, but it'll be interesting. And the summer's a good time to figure that out, internally. I'll let you get out of here on this question. If you're a Penn State fan, what storylines or what rumors do you want to hear in the offseason that makes you feel better about the season? Whether, whatever that may be, what do you want to hear rumors of, or what things do you want to hear whispers of that be like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to hear right now?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think you want to hear Abdul Carter is very focused You want him to be as good a player as he could possibly be because he's a game wrecker in a position where you need one, and the style you play. You need somebody to be able to rush the passer outside the edges, and I think Abdul's that guy. I think you need a really focused Abdul Carter, and you need to hear that. And I think you also need to hear somebody developing that could be as versatile on defense as Jair Brown was. Because if you want to be that kind of a defense, you need that guy who's all over the place. The Steelers back in the day when they had Troy Polamalu, I think that's obviously Jair Brown's not Troy Polamalu, very different players, but a guy who can move around, a guy you had to account for all the time. You need to have that kind of guy for Manny Diaz's defense to really be what it could be. And I think whether that's Winston, whether that's Wheatley, whatever it is, you have to have that guy you're always accounting for because he's always in a different spot. And I think you have to have that rumor that this guy's or that guy is really stepping into that. But other than that, I think offense just unless there's some rumor that Aller takes 10 steps forward in summer. That's what you really want to hear, where he's an elite passer and he's figured it all out in a couple of months. And there's no way, he's Christian Hackenberg as a freshman, or he's whatever. He's an NFL draft prospect right now. Any of those kind of rumors, that would help you. But I think you just really need them to play the way they played last year and develop on and build on what they were and hit a couple of more big plays and have some of those receivers. Like it would help if Cephas is elite. That obviously helps. But those are the kind of things that I think if you're a fan, you're looking at and saying, we really want that sort of stuff to be what comes out of the summer. And you found a punter.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
That's high on my list right now. Shawn, you got anything else before we let Mr. Donnie out of here?
Well, Corey stole my leadership question.
Sorry,
because that was going to be my big. Ending question. But I did have another one. Do you think this team is deeper than last year's team? Because last year the depth was, kind of off the charts compared to where we've seen it. Do you feel like this is a deeper team as we stand right now?
At some positions, yes. Definitely on, I think, all three defensive positions they are. I think they're deeper on the offensive line for sure than they were a year ago. I think they're deeper at receiver than they were a year ago. And one of the other things Franklin said that I was really interested in, and haven't brought it up yet to him or to anybody else with the program, but he said at his last press conference before the game, after the post-practice things, but he said that at tight end, they could be as good as they were last year or better. And that's without Brenton Strange. So those guys must be really Rapplier or Schlaffer or Mega Barnwell. They must think highly of a couple of those guys right now to say that they could lose Brenton Strange and be perhaps better this year at tight end than they were. So I would say they're deeper there, but they're certainly not deeper at quarterback, and they're certainly not deeper at running back. So unless I think Potts helps them out at running back for sure. You can you tweak an ankle or something. If you're Nick Singleton, you could put Potts in there and put him in the rotation. You're going to be okay for a little bit. But you need Aller to stay healthy because I don't know if we saw much from Prabula and definitely I didn't even throw Smolik out there really. I mean he botched the one snap and that was it for him. So they really don't have a third guy right now that I think they're comfortable with. And it's so tough to judge a guy like Bo in the blue-white game because that's, you touch him and he's down. And I think he's a more physical runner. I think that's more his game. So I think interestingly, they're not as deep at quarterback as they were a year ago, even though the quarterback everybody wanted to see is now the quarterback. But it all really depends on him staying healthy. And I think that's a position with the portal they really have to hit hard.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We'll have to have you back on when we do our NIL taste testing. And we'll figure that. We'll figure out the logistics of that. But Donnie Collins, it's always a pleasure. We love having you on. Where can people find you? I saw that the podcasts are back up and running again, which is nice to see. Just let the people know. Yeah,
I took a couple of weeks off when I was on McNamara duty up at Syracuse for the podcast, but podcast is back on. You can find it. It's called Penn Stated. It's on. You can find that anywhere, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. It's there. We have at Penn State TT on Twitter, the Times-Tribune.com online, You find articles there. Just Facebook.com/whatever Donnie Collins TT, I think it is. So yeah, we're all over the place, and yeah, I'd love to have you joining on.
We'll send you all of our Facebook comments towards your direction. You can have all the Facebook haters.
Yeah, I read some of them before. They were great. Really rational. Really well thought out. Great job.
Those are just from we don't even have a big Facebook presence. And so those are from just people commenting on our stuff alone, which is pretty impressive. But anyway, thank you very much, Donnie Collins. You have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, guys. You too.
Thank you, Donnie.
Yep.
All right. You guys have to give me a second to figure out life here. Yeah.
Ori.
That wasn't that bad. There we go. We're good. That could have been a lot worse. Usually it takes a lot to get it back, but not bad.
Donnie's awesome, isn't he?
He really is. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, I was thinking about it. We should write down everyone who's been on the show so far, because we've had a lot of fantastic people on the show, and very, very, very appreciative of the people that have come, especially professionals, just coming on and doing a solid. Obviously, we really appreciate that. And Donnie Collins has now been on the show twice, but we've interacted with him numerous times, privately, on Twitter, publicly, and he's just a fantastic dude. So very, very much appreciative of him. But we've had a lot of great people on in the last year in general, and expect to have more in the future. So I'm very just awesome that we're able to get these people on the show.
Yeah, like you said, people who cover the team, and we'll bring something up to a guy like Donnie or a guy like Geiger or Audrey Snyder, and they'll kind of have they have a different perspective, a different way of looking at things that honestly I hadn't thought about. So it's just awesome, having the opportunity to speak to those people.
Yeah. You sound a little scrapey right there. I don't know if something changed all of a sudden, but Donnie, and you got a little, I don't know, like you're next to an airplane or something all of a sudden.
Okay, hold on.
Anyway, you ready for this? Let's go to our... You like that?
I did.
For the blog, he's watching today, so they're probably like, "Ooh, baby."
TV.
Okay, I wanted to show, and for the blog, he's here. I'm curious what his thoughts are on this one, because I still, T-Phrase on Twitter tried to explain this to me, and I just don't agree, to be honest with you. Not that I think I know everything, but I just don't agree with this defense. And I don't really know what happened. I'm going to put this up here. If you're listening on a podcast, we're going to do some film real quick. And so here it is. This is the play. It's on Twitter, by the way. The whole film breakdown's on Twitter, so you go find that. And same thing we do for the, all the games during the season. But this play, and I'm going to try to make it bigger in a second, I don't know what the stunt was by the defensive line, but I am now pretty certain, because this play happened in a Utah game, and we were told by a certain player on the team that the defensive line did what they were supposed to do. They DM'd us, and they told us that, no, I can't tell you what the play is, but the defensive line is supposed to do what they did. That's what we were told. And so I'm like, okay, like that's fine. So now we know, I think in this situation or this play call, that they were trying, whenever they have that tight end over there on the bottom of your screen, that they're going to slant that direction. So you'll see both Denai Dennis Sutton, but then you'll also see Caleb Artest bounce outside. And to me, that's wrong. Like, you don't want two guys farting in the same Coke bottle. Like, you don't want two guys on the outside to let that gap just sitting there. As you can see, open up. And now, Katron Allen didn't see it. I think it was because Denai Dennis Sutton got there and disrupted things a lot faster. But if Shelton gets a little bit more of a block on Denai Dennis Sutton and Katron Allen's able to sit for a second, he might be able to see that gap that forms and take off after it. So I don't really know. And so T. Phrase tried to say that, oh, this was, Caleb Artesta's fault for doing that. I'm not so sure that is the case. I don't want to say he's wrong, but I'm just not certain that is the real question. I haven't been able to figure it out. I thought maybe Keon Wiley, he takes a running back there to the outside, or the tight end out there. Maybe a run responsibility, that's his gap. That would make a little bit more sense to me. But anyway, this play was interesting to me. It's on Twitter. I could show you the Utah play again, Sean, if that would maybe.
No, I remember it.
But I just don't get it.
Everybody else, because I doubt they will. Yeah, I don't really get it either. I know Manny, he loves, exotic looking things, and a lot of that, the thing I don't really love about it is there's a lot on Denai Dennis Sutton's shoulders. So, like you said, if Shelton beats him and Katron Allen, a guy with a lot of vision who is a patient runner, he's going to be able to find that hole, and he's going for at least 30 or 40 yards. So, I mean, I don't love it either. And it seems like the type of thing that if it happens against a Michigan, we're still watching Blake Corum run, like right there, and that's against Utah, who's not quite as good as Michigan, but they're still a team that's good. That's gonna.
Here we go. This is the one.
Okay, here we go.
So watch. Let me pause it here. Okay. Watch your right side here. Watch the right defensive tackles, Devon Ellies. But now we know this happens with other defensive tackles too. That's why I was just kind of like, hey, this is what it is. But watch, boom. He slants once. Okay, that's fine. If he stays in that gap right there, I'm like, okay, sweet. Okay, it's fine. But then watch. He keeps coming out. So again, you have two defensive ends on the outside of that tight end. And I just don't get it. I do not understand the point of it. I see the safety, at least in this case, is filling. So this actually makes a little bit more sense, right? But in the other situation, you didn't even have anyone filling, unless that was Keon Wiley who was supposed to fill. But I don't know. So just food for thought. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could submit comments to Manny Diaz and be like, "Hey, Manny, we don't like that." But in all seriousness, like, yeah, I mean, if it hurts you against Utah. When you're playing against the Michigan, when you're playing against the team with, two of probably the top 15 backs in the country, yeah, that could really hurt you. But, I don't really love questioning. I should say I do question coaches all the time. But, like, somebody with Manny Diaz's knowledge and experience, and he's getting paid a lot to do this, I'm sure there's a method to the madness.
Me too. It was interesting, though, because I tweeted out and I said, basically, I'm just going to assume that every once in a while there's going to be gaps. And of all people, Nick Singleton liked that tweet and with that film. So say that for what you will. I don't want to spend too much time on film today because I showed some during Donnie's interview, which I thought was good. I do want to show there's a couple that could have been a touchdown on here. I wanted to show the Kalen King truck in case someone didn't see that. Watch Kalen King pull on this, or excuse me, Big Ione pull on this and flatten Kalen King. I just thought that was really funny. I wanted to show that one. And then I wanted to show you an underrated play by Denai Dennis Sutton that maybe people don't realize. So he's going to line up here at defensive end. I'll watch him fight down the line and then catch Nick Singleton. I mean, full speed, he catches Nick Singleton. Fight, and then he's able to get off his block, off Sal Wormley's block. I think that might be Caden Wallace, actually, still, he's fighting with. And and get that block or get that tackle. So I thought that of all the sacks and everything, that looked really good. I was really impressed with that play by Denai Dennis Sutton. And then is there anything else I wanted to show that I really wanted to show? The Zane Durant one I showed while Donnie was talking about him, but the one where he caught Bo Prabila, I was really impressed with. Do you think the throw by Drew Aller was... Someone had a point on this play that maybe it was actually Katron Allen not catching it. I mean, I couldn't see the angle, but I don't know how high over Katron Allen's head this was.
I thought seeing it live was pretty high.
Okay.
And regardless, I mean,
yeah, that's easy.
It's not a good throw. He made it as hard as possible for him to get, and you got to just be able to float that in. And Donnie kind of, like you said, Donnie kind of touched on it. Sometimes Aller might trust his arm a little too much, but then again, there was a play where Aller checked down, and I don't even know if you could see it on the TV, but Keandre Lambert-Smith is wide open deep. I think might have been the first drive of the game. Yeah, so first drive of the game, and I think he just wanted to pick up the first down and go for the safe throw, but like KLS is still running if he throws it up to him. And I'm sure it's being drilled into Drew's head that look for the check down. You could live, you don't need to force a ball deep, and I think he, probably takes that to heart and whatever, but trust your instinct still. And I think that's probably a tough thing to tell a quarterback. Both to trust your instinct, and I think his instinct is let it rip, but also don't be afraid to check down. And sometimes, and I think one of the things that when you're a young quarterback still developing, still coming into your own, is, kind of knowing the difference, knowing when to just let it rip, trust your gut, and when to check it down. I think this is the play. So you're going to see Lambert-Smith. He kind of runs out of the screen, but there's nobody behind him. Yeah, right there, Corey paused it. There's nobody there. It looks like Aller's looking toward Allen the whole way. So I'm not even sure he sees Lambert-Smith, but if he's looking downfield, I think he probably lets that rip. So it's just one of those things that I know Mike Yurcich went over with them.
Yeah, and that previous play, the one where they missed Katron Allen, it looked like Tamir Robinson was supposed to take Allen, and he didn't. And so there's some miscommunication there that the defense needs to clean up. You can't have somebody that wide open. We already talked about the Amari Evans touchdown where Storm Duck fell over. Storm Duck was physical, and I think that paid off on the first incompletion of the entire game, but I think it might have cost him on the touchdown because he actually engaged with Amari Evans, and he was one that fell over. I do want to show the nice catch by Johnson, but I still think, I think they're supposed to spike it, and they didn't spike it. And then B, I'm pretty sure it was going to be 100% a touchdown if he gets this ball floated, a little bit better touch on it. I think Johnson walks into the end zone if it has a little bit better touch, but it just didn't. Let me see if I can find that one. Somebody, Lambda, asked on YouTube, what do you think of Dinkins? Do you think we can run the T formation, the trot line formation with him this year? I can show you. Here's Dinkins right here. This is probably, no, not this one, but this is a really good block for him too. Good run by Singleton, actually. But Dinkins seals off Denai Dennis Sutton really well. I thought Dinkins blocked better than I thought he was going to, Sean. I was very impressed with him.
Me too. I thought Dinkins had a pretty good game. I don't know how many catches he had off the top of my head. I do know he had at least one. But like you said, he, in looking at highlights and everything, he is not afraid to block, and that's something we just didn't know a whole lot about him. Like I've said previously, every time I saw him, I generally liked him, but I just didn't know how he could block. It was just an unknown. So yeah, I mean, I think he's a good candidate to be able to be in that T or trout wide formation.
Yeah, I did find the other one I wanted to show real quick. This is right before the half, and he has all the time in the world. I mean, he just puts a little bit more touch on this. I think it's a touchdown. And he just kind of puts it on a rope when he doesn't need to put it on a rope. I mean, there's a pretty significant gap there. Lamont Payne maybe got sucked in a little bit for no reason either. He was in no man's land himself there. But you'd like, I mean, that I know it probably was supposed to be a spike originally, but I love Franklin throwing his hands up. But that probably should have been a touchdown as well.
Yeah, if he floats it up, a little bit toward the pylon, that's 6. But it was good enough to be completed. So I do wonder if Tyler Johnson trapped the ball. You couldn't even see on. I don't know if BTN had a million angles for a spring game, which I get. But I couldn't see anything even on TV when I rewatched it if Tyler Johnson trapped it. But nonetheless, it was a good effort, and it was a catch on the field. I do agree with you, too. That's one of the things with Franklin being out on the field. You could see how expressive he could be. And, you could tell he definitely wanted to spike it and run a play specifically for the end zone, because the half came to an end right after that.
No, you're right. I mean, it was this is the one I wanted to show you with Dinkins. Right from the get-go here. It's already started, but Dinkins is sealing this block again. They're pulling 2 guys down. Dinkins is just blocking down, and he seals the end perfectly. I think that might be I think it's Zariah Fisher who blocks that time. So I thought he did a really good job there. And then that's a nice hit by Kevin Winston Jr. But anyway, just wanted to show you guys some of that stuff. We're not going to go too far into it, but if you want more, I broke down quite a bit on Twitter. It's on Twitter for you. Just search on Twitter Hardcore PSUFB, and then just put breakdown or film, or it should pop up for you pretty quickly. Or blue and white, honestly, probably will pop up for you as well. So,
yeah, good job by Cory on that as always. He did awesome.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. Do you want to get into some recruiting?
I'm ready to talk about recruiting. Not a lot happened though.
You like that?
On the prowl.
On the prowl.
Rawr.
Should we put that again? It's pretty cool.
I like that. Was that Joey Porter Jr. or just a random guy?
You want to take another guess? Because it's not Joey Porter Jr.
Okay, let me see again. Yeah, because I didn't think he was tall enough to be Joey.
That's a tough. That's not much to go off of. I'll give you
That
that.
is hard. All right, yeah, tell me.
Defensive lineman.
Really?
Yep.
On the team? Or
Yes.
recruit?
On the team currently. No. Maybe not till the summer.
Oh, okay. That makes it easier. Is it Jameel Lyons?
No, but good guess. No. It can't be that many more.
Yeah, I know. There's is it the guy from Connecticut?
New York?
New York, Blanding.
Yeah, it's Blanding.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. Well, we have. Oh, wait a second. You ready for this?
Nice.
Was that
I
too
love
long?
that. It's all right. I hit the dab during it.
We have 3 new commits to talk about. I feel like that's a good commit song. Like you only play that like roughly 20 times a year.
Right. Should we play it 3 separate times for the
No,
3 commits?
I don't think so. I don't think so. But Penn State's got 3 new commits to discuss. I think we talk about the 2024 guys first, and then we'll talk to the 2025 guy. Caleb Brewer, just get out of the way, Sean. I know what you want to call him.
He is a Gruden grinder through and through. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, he's listed as an athlete. I can actually throw this up there. You're going to disappear again, but that's okay. He is technically listed as an athlete, though if you ask most people, he's likely to play either. I don't know why it's doing that. Either offensive line or defensive line. Not going to be playing tight end at the next level. I thought he was going to play interior offense line no matter what, but now I'm feeling like the way that they're picking up guys, maybe defensive line isn't 100% off the table yet. We'll just have to wait and see. But anywho, Caleb Brewer, top 15 industry, 24/7 Sports has him 8th best athlete. And I wrote down specifically that T. Phrase says, quote unquote, not a tight end. So get that out of your system.
Yeah, watching his highlights, I mean, he's a good high school football player. Like you could put him at a bunch of different spots. Like Corey said, I don't see him as a tight end at Penn State. I just don't see him as a Big Ten quality tight end, and that's nothing against him. I think he could definitely be a Big Ten quality defensive lineman and an offensive lineman. Definitely plays hard and loves to hit. I noticed the physicality really jumped off the screen at me. And yeah, you see he was at Michigan a couple weeks ago. I think he was there for their spring game. So he's somebody Michigan had a lot of interest in. And if there's interest from Michigan for a guy in the trenches, that's a guy that Penn State should want. So I think he was probably a take for Michigan too. So it's not like they offered, but it wasn't a real offer. I think that offer was real. So yeah, I was happy to get him on board.
Yeah, and I mean, another guy, and I don't know if this is probably true or not, but it seems like him being from Pennsylvania plays a little bit of role. And you know what? I have top 15. That top 15 is top 15 in PA. Now that I realize, not athlete. Top 15 in PA. 8th in 24/7 Sports in PA. Industry on 3 has him as top 15. So that's where that came from. I was losing my mind there a little bit. But that is Caleb Brewer. I'll be interested to see where he lines up when it's all said and done. But yeah, I think right now interior offense line is kind of where he's going to be. Gruden grinder.
Yeah, Gruden grinder playing the offensive line. Perfect.
That's all you need. We'll get into it after the next guy. But offensive line in this class is something that we obviously need to talk about. I actually don't have film for the next guy. For some reason, he doesn't have a huddle set up, which I thought was odd.
I noticed that too.
I don't know exactly where other people got their film from. I'm having some technical.
I saw him on YouTube.
Okay, I didn't check there. I'm having some technical difficulties with the ticker. That's why that has disappeared. But the next guy I want to talk about is the other offensive lineman that Penn State just picked up in 4-star Donovan Harbor out of Wisconsin. And again, my thingy has disappeared on me. But Harbor, if you have a subscription to The Athletic, there's a good story on there. Number 1 player from Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin up to this point had gotten every single number 1 player from the state of Wisconsin for like the last 6 years, I think. So that's a big deal that he didn't go to Wisconsin. However, you dive deeper into it, and although he had an offer from Wisconsin, the new regime there did not pursue him. Not that he was going to be pursued by them, or he wanted to go there. He's actually an LSU fan growing up, apparently. But anyway, he was not going to be pursued by Wisconsin anyway. And the same with his teammate Corey Smith, who is a running back who is also being crystal balled to Penn State and is making his announcement in about a week. They're both from Wisconsin. They both came down for the blue and white game together, and they're both likely going to end up at Penn State. So Harbor, by the way, Shawn, just a mass of humanity. I mean, he's like 300-something pounds already as a junior in high school. I liked what his high school coach said. Is like, when he gets his hands on you, you're going for a ride. I think that was a good way to put it. He drives people to the ground. He's vicious. He's mean. Not the most, limber guy. He's not the most flexible. He tiptoes into the hole a little bit. He doesn't have great pad level. But when he gets a hold of you, it's over. And I think from a size perspective, I think Phil Trotwine and companies are pretty happy.
Yeah, he's a big human being. And from watching him, he loves to put you on the ground. Like, even in pass pro, he is just knocking people on the ground. And yeah, his teammate, like, a lot of times he's running behind Harbor to get those long touchdown runs. And yeah, and it kind of surprises me that Luke Fickell isn't more interested, or that, because he kind of seems like a Wisconsin offensive lineman, because they're not always the most athletic offensive lineman up there, but they run that power scheme still, and it's worked forever up there. And it seems like he'd be a natural fit there. But I'm happy either they cooled on him, or maybe he really wasn't that interested to begin with in going to Wisconsin. And he's going to end up with us, because it was a little bit, and I'm not comparing them as players, they're different players, but just as far as a football player goes, it was a lot like watching Javen Williams' highlights, just putting people in the ground and just having no regard for human life. And I love that in offensive lineman.
Yeah, not as athletic as Javen Williams from like a speed or a pulling ability or getting out in space, but from like a bully perspective, yeah, like he's a bully. Which I don't know. I don't know if it was 24/7 Sports or On3, but there was like a little bit of a CJ Thorpe comparison, which I thought was kind of an interesting comparison.
That's a better one. Yep, CJ Thorpe out of high school, yeah.
And so take that for what you will, but I thought that was interesting as well. So that's Donovan Harbor. Again, Penn State has now Cooper, has Brewer, has Harbor, is potentially going to try to get Kevin Haywood, potentially trying to get Garrett Sexton, the offensive tackle, and Satterwhite as well. And so there's like, and Liam Andrews is still out there. Yep. And I haven't heard much about Frazier lately, but so there's a lot of names out there still. And Penn State has a lot of offensive linemen. Cooper Cousins maybe has to bump out and play tackle now, because you have a bunch of interior guys, not a bunch of exterior guys. It'll be interesting to see how it works. We have a question about it later in the show, too.
And at some point, they're going to run out of room, and they're going to have to turn some guys down. And then I wonder where Brewer ends up, because it could be that he's going to end up on the defensive line, because we do need defensive linemen. But yeah, eventually they're going to run out of room. Like, I think for a guy like William Satterwhite, they'll make room for him. He just picked up a Bama offer. So, when you get that offer from Bama, or you get an offer from Georgia, that's always like, that they're always going to be a factor. And Georgia, I mean, as good as our recruiting class was last year, Georgia took our lunch money. And, when you're competing with those types of teams, it's going to happen a lot. But so hopefully we're able to fend off Bama and get Satterwhite up here. I know we just lost Rico Scott to Bama. But yeah.
Yeah, wide receiver is a position where a lot of people have asked us about lately too, and there's just so many four-star guys that Penn State's interested in. It's hard to really know who's ahead of who. I don't want to say Rico Scott wasn't a take for Penn State, but I just don't know where like. I mean, we thought Keelan Adams was high on the list. Now we're hearing maybe Ohio State's been interested there. He was just offered recently by Ohio State, and we know what Ohio State can do with wide receivers. We get that. I just don't know who's number one on the board for them and how many they want to take and where they all kind of fall. As a Josiah Brown is another guy you got to pay attention to there. So I mean, there's a lot of guys you got to pay attention to when it comes to wide receivers. I just don't know who is highest on their list and how many they plan on taking, and I don't know where Rico Scott fell into that. So I don't know.
Yeah, that was the thing with him, because I know it wasn't 100% if he was a take for us or not. But I don't want to sound like Mr. Sour Grapes guy over here, because I do think he's a good player. If he was a take for Bama, there's a good chance he was still a take for us. But it's one of those things that happen. And Ohio State's another team. Now they're kind of a team in the region when a guy gets an offer. He has the Ohio State offer. It's a good thing when they still come to Penn State anyway, and a lot of times we still win those battles with the Ohio State, certainly with the Michigans of the world. But it's another team that you're like, you got to compete with these guys now. But those are the guys you got to get, and it's not like we haven't been able to reel them in before. Denied Dennis Sutton in the blue-white game. Georgia, Bama, and Penn State were his finalists, and Penn State were able to fend off Bama and Georgia to get him. So you can't be afraid of the competition, but you have to just know it's there.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Let's go to the last guy here. Again, I don't know what's going on with the ticker. We're just going to ignore that and move on with our life. And this is a 2025 guy. So before you start freaking out about, we mentioned Corey Smith was Donovan Harbour's teammate. He's a running back as well. Potentially a 2024 running back commit. I'll get to that. I have a question for you, Shawn, a little bit later in a second. But I want to get to this guy, running back Keandre Barker, 2025 running back. Never have I really heard anyone speak more about wanting to go to a school because of like a player that used to play there. This guy loves Saquon Barkley and has wanted to be Saquon Barkley, really emulates him, and everything I read is oh, Saquon Barkley, and I don't want to say it, but I'm pretty sure Penn State only is in consideration and now obviously a verbal commit because of Saquon Barkley. That's just all it is to it. There are a couple interesting things to Keandre Barker that I think are worth mentioning. Number one, he played his first 2 years at BB High School in Arkansas, and now he's transferred to the Woodlands High School in Texas, which is 5A and is going to be a lot more competitive than what he's used to. So that's going to be something to pay attention to. If he can show he can do what he's doing on these highlights, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the highlights. If he's able to do that at the Woodlands, he's going to be probably a 5-star guy because he just runs through these people like a hot knife through butter. Now, on top of that, what else is sort of interesting is that Penn State went out of their way to accept a verbal commit from a 2025 running back 2 years away so early. A lot of the times we don't see the running back commits. We don't even see them letting the running back commit until they get a little bit further in development because you don't know who Keandre Barker could end up being. So it'll be interesting to see how he performs. He could be a guy going throughout the camp circuit and coming out and by the end of his junior film as a 5-star guy. We just don't know yet. And it's just is interesting to me, Shawn, is we don't usually see Penn State go full send on the don't know yet guys at the running back specific position.
Yeah, and there's something about, and I think this has to do a lot with Penn State's success, especially recently on the recruiting trail. There's something to be said about getting in on a guy early and getting in on a talented guy early, and Barker is one of them. Like you said, step up in competition now, going into Texas, going to a big school. He dominated the land of Bill Clinton, and the one thing that jumps off the screen to me is he just runs away from people. Like there's so many of these plays where just nobody's around him. So yeah, could that be due to competition? Possibly. Yeah. Maybe a step up in competition. He doesn't have as many runs like that, but I think it just shows you that the staff feels good enough about him that they're able to, say we'll take you now. And I mean, it's not like the kid's a slouch. Like he is a top 200, top 150 kid already in the class of 2025. So he's, like I said, the speed, the vision, I mean, it's all there. And he was only a sophomore last year. So I'd look for him to get more attention, like you said, at camps. And then he still has a junior and senior season to put out. So big fan of this kid. I just love his running style.
His film's fun to watch. If you're listening on the podcast, highly recommend you check out the YouTube. We have some highlights here. He just runs it by everybody. I don't think it's a slight on Arkansas high school football in total. I just think where he's from specifically might be part of that. I'm not really sure. I know I'm closer to Arkansas than a lot of you people, but that's a whole different world in Arkansas. Just trust me on that.
How similar is Alabama and Arkansas?
Not very similar at all, to be honest with you. Really? Alabama seriously gets a bad rap for being like really Southern Georgia or Southern, like kissing your uncle and stuff like that, whatever. It is not close to Louisiana and Arkansas and Mississippi. Not even close. And I traveled, my old job, I traveled all throughout the South. And not the good places. I'm talking middle of nowhere, Mississippi, middle of nowhere, Arkansas, middle of nowhere, Louisiana, middle of nowhere, Georgia, middle of nowhere, Florida, middle of nowhere, South Carolina, and obviously Alabama. And Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas, that is your true South. I never went to Missouri, but you probably lump in Southern Missouri into that too. That is the true South. You could probably throw in Western Alabama too, but it's a different animal once you get into Mississippi and Arkansas. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, I've never been there, so I can't really say. I've only been in Georgia. So
Eastern Alabama, especially, you get enough. Well, Huntsville especially is nothing like the South. Auburn gets enough Atlanta influence. It's not a lot like the rest of the South. Montgomery and Birmingham are still pretty big cities. It's not until you get to the west of Montgomery does it really start getting really, really south. And the Mobile down there is a little bit of its own story. Anyway, there's your geography lesson. Not the same.
Yeah.
Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, way different than Alabama. Way different.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah. Well, that's all the commits we have. All the commits that we have. Penn State picks up 3. Penn State has 10 commits now in the 2024 class. They have a top 10 or better, depending on who you look at right now. Don't think it's going to stay that way. Shawn, what I was going to talk to you about, 2 things. Number one being they got to probably take offensive tackles from this point on, offensive line wise. But I thought what another interesting thing is, I think they're going to try to get a portal guy. And I don't think they're going to try to get a portal guy to fill a need this year, but I think they're going to try to get like a sophomore portal guy that breaks up some of this like wave of guys. So you could potentially lose like 5 really important offensive linemen next year. And it's okay. It's great if you have a bunch of, great offensive linemen coming in, Javen Williams, Alex Burkmeyer, and then this upcoming class. But those are still a lot of young guys you'd be depending on. So if you can find a sophomore or a junior that would play significantly, not this year, but next year, that'd be golden for Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. Do you have any inside knowledge on them doing that, or is it a hunch?
Well, they've offered players already in the transfer portal.
So guys that can play. Okay. Yeah.
one guy from Oklahoma State, he's already committed to BYU. There's another guy from Wyoming, who they might be after. And then there was another, I don't know if they've offered him yet, but another offensive tackle from Notre Dame, your favorite school in the world, just went into the transfer portal.
Yeah, Notre Dame does no offensive tackles, so I'll take a Catholic traitor. And and yeah, like if you look at next year, I mean, we're gonna run out offense, not run out, but our two starting offensive tackles are most likely gonna be gone next year. Olu probably leaves next year. I don't expect him back, and Caden Wallace is gone next year. So all of a sudden, assuming Wallace beats out Shelton, you're down 2 offensive tackles. And yeah, you could say Shelton will start next year. I think that probably penciled in. But then who's the other guy going to be? So you need competition, and then you need depth. So yeah, I could totally see them taking another offensive tackle. And I think that's probably why they're active in the portal there.
Yeah. I think I butchered one of the fan questions. I think that was a fan question. But the last thing I want to say about recruiting and just in life in general, I guess, Denai Dennis Sutton, I think, proves the value of 5-star guys. I mean, I know everyone knows that already, but I just want to hammer home the point. 5-star guys are 5-star guys for a reason. Like, you can have a high 4-star guy that turns out great for you, but there's obviously more 4-star guys. There's only 32-ish 5-star guys for a reason. Those 5-star guys, more times than not, are fantastic. And people have been already asking, like, will Penn State end up as a top 10 class in 2024? We mentioned, I think, last week about how you kind of have to have some 5-star guys. And there's a couple guys that apparently we are more in the running for now than maybe we were. Benedict Ume, the defensive tackle, is a guy to really watch. He just visited Penn State this past weekend. He's a high 4-star, 5-star guy from Connecticut. But those are the kind of guys that you really need to get in order to have not just a top 10 rating nowadays, but also to be a national championship contender. I mean, just look at and this is no knock on all the other defensive ends because they're all really good, but look at Chop Robinson, who I don't know if he was a 4 or 5-star, but he was high 4, if not 5.
He was a 5. Yep.
Okay. Look at Chop Robinson. Look at Denai Dennis Sutton. And then this is no knock on Adisa Isaac because he's my favorite player in the team. But look at how long it took for Adisa Isaac to step in the role, even though he's a freak athlete in his own right, compared to what Chop Robinson and Denai Dennis Sutton did immediately. And there's nothing wrong with what Adisa Isaac is. Most people, it takes a year or two to get through the depth chart and show what you got. But the 5-stars, more times than not, can immediately come in and make impacts. And if you want to take that next step, you got to have to find a way to get those guys. And when they're in your own state, you have to get them. But that's the next step for Penn State. And I'm not saying it's an easy one, but that's kind of where they need to get to.
No doubt. It's not just immediate impact either. It's higher ceilings. Like, how much did we talk about last year? And we both wanted Sean Clifford to start last year. But how many times did we say Drew Aller has more upside, and you could do more with Drew Aller? You could do it's the same thing at every position. You could do more with a Denai Dennis Sutton, and we love Amin Vanover, but you could get more out of him. Amin Vanover's probably hit his ceiling, and that's no knock on him. I like him, and you can't keep a guy off the field like him, but that's probably as good as he's going to get. I don't think we're going to reach Denai Dennis Sutton's potential. You probably won't even see it till he gets. You won't see it until he gets to the NFL. And even if he's a superstar at Penn State, that's just going to be the reality. Like, these guys, you hit the prime of your career if you're a great player when you're about 27, 28 years old. And he's going to keep at, looking better and better as long as he's at Penn State. Like, I fully expect that. And this might be the same thing with Drew Aller. Now, are there busts? Sure. But busts don't look like deny Dennis Sutton looked in the blue white game, or even what we saw last year from him already having some sacks. And I don't think he should have been a starter last year or anything, but he was able to get a few sacks. He had an interception. So yeah, this guy, he might not be a starter per se, but he's going to play a ton this year, and he's going to be fun to watch. And he might be so good that we have to start him.
Yeah. Well, that's all I wanted to say about that. I'm going to try. I have no idea what's going to happen or what's going on with my thing tonight. Let's jump into fan questions if you don't have anything else to say. Our last segment of the night. I don't know if this is going to work the way we want it to.
Didn't hear the audio, but it looked cool.
Yeah, I don't know why you don't see the audio on those. Okay, but the real question is, okay, good. The questions did pop up. Excellent. I wasn't sure if that was going to happen or not. Good. Sweet. Good. All right, we're going to spitfire through these a little bit faster than we usually do. So no long rants on these guys. Devin gave us a bunch of questions. I'll be respectful and we'll answer all of them. I'll let you answer the first one, Shawn. I'll answer the second, then you can answer the third one. First question, Shawn. Do you expect the offensive line to be better or worse this season when compared to 2022?
Better. Part of it's depth, and then part of it, you have to assume health. If you can have Olu for all 12 games, then I think that automatically makes it better. So some of it depends on, and some of it is just from a depth perspective. I expect this offensive line to be better, but we could miss Drew Scruggs a little early in the season because he was kind of the linchpin that held everything together. Yeah,
I was going to mention Drew Scruggs. I think that's a good point. Injuries. Caden Wallace was hurt from the Ohio State game, made Effner play out against JT Tomaloa, and then also Landon Tangwa. So, do you think Penn State will land? Do you think Penn State will land a transfer addition at defensive tackle or offensive tackle? Devin, I'm going to say that Penn State lands a transfer in the offensive tackle realm, and I do think it's going to be a sophomore or some guy who has 2 to 3 years of eligibility left. I don't think he's going to come in and be a starter. I don't think you're going to be able to get anybody or convince anyone to do that. But I think Phil Trotwine could be getting to the point where he's making a name for himself in the offensive line world, and people want to come play for him. Defensive tackle, I want to say yes. There's another question later on, so I don't want to hold up too much on that. But I want to say yes, but I think it's got to be the perfect fit. I'm more convinced that they'll take an offensive tackle than I am a defensive tackle. Do you have anything to add to that, Shawn, or are you good?
So you think there's more of a chance we take an offensive tackle than a defensive tackle? Interesting.
Yes.
I mean, porque no los dos. I mean, I would take both. And if the, obviously it depends on the numbers and everything. We do know Jimmy Chris just transferred out. That's some news. And there could be other guys departing for the transfer portal. So if the numbers are there, yeah, I mean, I could see both.
I think just so we get down this road, I think Penn State's right now at 86 scholarships. So I think they're still expecting some attrition. That number it's close right now. That's the only thing I can say for certain. Next question. Does the lack of size depth at defensive tackle scare you given recent struggles against physical teams? Shawn, we've answered this question pretty much every other week, it feels like, at this point. Yes or no? How about that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, beef. So I'm going to say I want more beef. And yeah, depth, I think we're a little deeper than people realize. Really, you need 4 or 5 guys. I think we have at least, I think we probably have that. Ellis, Izzard, Beeman, Durant, Vandenberg. So really, I think we're a little deeper than people think, but I would still like to see meteor defensive tackle in there.
This is from Sean Clifford, not Clifford, Sean Clifford.
Darn.
Any rumblings on Bear Alexander? If you don't really follow national college football that much, you're a Penn State fan specifically. Bear Alexander is a defensive tackle from Georgia. Former teammates at IMG. I believe he's from IMG. I believe he was teammates with Katron at IMG. So there's a little bit of a connection there. But very good defensive tackle at Georgia. Entered the transfer portal. First thing I heard was Texas. The latest, he's 100% visiting USC. So I would not really think that's going to be happening anytime soon. I haven't heard any rumblings as far as Bear Alexander to Penn State. But that to me is a guy that you would go get, right? But if you're just going to get another Jordan Vandenberg, I don't think you go get one of those guys. Like if you can get a star, go get a star. But if you can't get a star, like do you just want to add another guy that's probably going to be 5th, 6th best? I don't know. Unless he's only a sophomore or something and you can develop him. But you're not going to take, in my opinion, a junior or a senior that is going to be fighting for 2nd, 3rd rotation, in my opinion. You want either a star or you want a guy that's going to be around for 2 to 3 years.
Basically. And yeah, I don't think Bear Alexander's coming here. Texas, USC, and he's not from the area. So I don't think he comes here. But yeah, I mean, I would be all right with taking a flyer out on a guy who, you know, like I've said before, the one thing about these defensive tackles that scares me a little bit is there's somebody who's going to replace PJ. And that could be tough to make up. But on the other hand, what we've talked about before is a lot of the mistakes that we had made have to do with gap issues and have to do with scheme issues. So may not be the biggest deal replacing PJ, but I would like to see a bigger defensive tackle come in.
Yeah, next question here from Dorito Bandit, longtime listener of the show. Omari Evans was impressive in the spring game. Do you think he has WR3, wide receiver 3, locked up at this point? If not, who do you think is most likely to beat him out for it? Sean, I don't think it's a lock because he's young. I think there's inconsistency there. And if I had to guess, obviously Dante Cephas is the first person that comes to mind, right?
Yeah, I mean, if Dante Cephas wasn't coming, yeah, I mean, if I were in charge, yeah, Omari Evans would be the third guy. James Franklin may not agree with me, but that's who I would support. I think I tweeted during the Blue-White game that he has my total endorsement to be wide receiver 3. But you have to also consider that not everybody's there yet. So the guy who I would say has the best chance to beat him out is Dante Cephas, but he seems, yeah, I mean, and one of the things that I like about Evans and that you saw last year too, and really all the guys who came in with Drew Aller is they all have a good rapport with him. Saunders has a good rapport with him. The 2 Ohio guys. Johnson had a few catches. Anthony Ivey had a couple catches, but Omari Evans seems to be his go-to guy. So to me, you want to make your quarterback as comfortable as possible. So that means you're going to expect Omari Evans on the field a lot in the fall.
Yeah, I Dante Cephas, Caden Saunders, probably the other 2, and Malik McClain I'd throw in there. But I don't think it's a lock.
Yep.
I think it's a consistency thing though at this point. Yeah. I wanted to mention another defensive tackle, just a funny story real quick. Defensive tackle from Minnesota who just, I think, transferred to A&M, I want to say. Literally straight up said he was transferring because he was sick of the cold. I thought that was the funniest thing. Just straight up, I don't want to be in the cold anymore. I thought that was funny. Couldn't blame him for that.
I understand.
Yeah. I just thought that was funny. Okay. We have sort of some breaking news. I mean, it's not breaking news, but it's a good gem. If you hung out with us today to the very end, I think it's a good news because we reached out to someone else. I'm not going to name that person on the show. about this specifically because I didn't know the latest on this. And so I went ahead and asked around, and we got some pretty good information. And so the question is from Maddie IC. And his question is, with UCLA and USC joining next year, do you think the Big Ten should just put one in the West and one in the East, or do you want more division realignment? And immediately I thought, oh, God, Sean's going to talk about the pod system. But then, there's the eye roll I love. But then I reached out to a, quote, reliable source who told me that it is not official yet, but the divisions are toast. There's likely going to be no divisions in the Big Ten starting in 2024. The proposal that has the most wind right now is the one that people have heard of probably the most, and that's 3-team protected rivalry. There is a 2-team protected rivalry and a 1-team protected rivalry, and they're trying to figure that out right now. The other thing that they are pretty certain of is that there will be 9 conference games still. So that's not changing, mostly because Fox paid for 9 conference games. And so that's more of a TV deal than anything else. So that's a substantial amount of money that Fox would be losing if that game, of a week of games were lost there. So no divisions, likely 3-team protected rivalries. And then the final juicy kicker, I know we've kind of discussed this before. I'm sure people discuss this at the bar all the time. Well, who would Penn State's 3 protected rivalries been? Well, this person told me that do not expect Ohio State to be a protected rival with Penn State. He says, just don't think it's going to happen. He thinks the Big Ten wants Ohio State to face somebody out west, most likely USC. Had some good battles back in the 2000s. And Penn State likely would also have one of the California teams as a part of one of their 3 protected rivals. Then you're probably looking at either 2 of the following 3 of Michigan State, Rutgers, and Maryland. So you'd have California, and then 2 of Maryland, Rutgers, and Michigan State. That's kind of what it's looking like. So that's what I was able to uncover. That's the news that we have for you.
Yeah. Big J journalism, Corey Stokey, and Hardcore Penn State. Okay, so I'm all right with the divisions going away. I do not like the East-West divisions. I think it's a bad way to draw this up. Big Ten East champion has won the Big Ten championship every year since it started. Since it went from legends and leaders to East to West. I don't think that's healthy competition at all. And yeah, I'd be all right with one of the protected rivals being a West Coast team school. And part of it is and we talked about this last summer, Penn State doesn't have a true rival in the Big Ten. And I've always been all right with it, partly because I grew up with that. And I don't know, it never really bothered me. But, maybe a Penn State USC matchup every year, James Franklin versus Lincoln Riley. That sounds enticing. It sounds like something that Fox and NBC and CBS would probably be excited by too. Just knowing that the Penn State USC game is going to be there every year, and we've had good games with USC over the years. The 2008 Rose Bowl notwithstanding, it's been not a rivalry, but it seems like every time they get together, it's always a close game. And same thing with UCLA. I mean, as long as Chip Kelly's going to be at UCLA, they're going to be a good team. I'm not saying they're going to be a great team, but they're going to be a good team. And going out to LA once every 2 years, yeah, it's a scary proposition. But at the same time, them coming out to Happy Valley once every 2 years, it's got to be scary for them too. So I would embrace something like that.
UCLA just got a 5-star quarterback that they poached from Oregon too. So they've got a 5-star quarterback in UCLA now. So who knows what's going to happen there? Yeah, I just think that's interesting. If this question wasn't asked, I wouldn't have even thought about reaching out. I didn't think there's anything new. We had heard rumblings of them getting rid of divisions, but from the person that I talked to, who's very much in the know, he said it's not official, but that's where it's going. And Very, very, very. This person isn't even someone I just know personally. This is someone that you guys know as well. Just said didn't throw a name onto it just yet. But anyway, it's gonna be interesting. I'm be curious because they announced the Big Ten schedule for this upcoming year sometime in November. I want to say end of October, November,
Something like that. Yeah.
So they don't have that much time. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, thank you all for the fan questions. Again, you can. Oh my goodness,
What?
I forgot. We got a question from Tyler on Instagram, and he's the only one that messages us questions on Instagram. And I forgot. Let me see if we answered his question. No, we didn't.
Oh fudge! I have more breaking news.
Oh, do you? Hold on. Before you break the news, let's get out of there. We'll put that up, and then let me get rid of this. And then let me get rid of
I'm
that.
very disappointed by this news, to be quite honest with you.
What do you have, Sean?
So, the soda rights at Penn State, that's been decided. It's going to be Pepsi again for 10 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, Pepsi expected to retain pouring rights, providing funds for scholarships. So, this is from Penn State. New 10-year pouring rights contract would designate PepsiCo as the supplier of beverages on all Penn State campuses, while also providing funds for a variety of university efforts.
Wow.
So, I'm kind of disappointed.
That stinks. That does stink.
I was really hoping we'd be going to Coke.
Yeah, me too. Tyler, we missed your question. It's a good question. I want to hold on to it for another week that's a little bit slower. So, Sean, do not let me forget. We have a question already for next week. I cannot forget because Tyler's awesome. We appreciate you, Tyler. My bad. That's on me. That's on me.
All right.
The only other thing I have, Sean, before we get out of there, two things actually. Number one, West Virginia, 7:30 p.m. Abdul Carter
Confirmed?
took a pic. No, I don't know if it's confirmed or not. Abdul Carter took a picture, put it on Instagram as a countdown to West Virginia, and the time would give you 7:30 Eastern on a Saturday. Take that for what you will, because most importantly, he didn't leave it up. He took it down. So, I mean, why would you not? Why would, you know what I mean? If it's not a big deal, then why would you? And why at 7:30? Like, if it was set for noon, I'd just be like, okay, he just put it to noon because that'd be the earliest it could possibly happen, right? But 7:30 is a pretty specific time. Like, you don't just accidentally set the clock to 7:30. You know what I mean? So take that for what you will.
Yeah, I could just see James Franklin or one of the social media people just like freaking out, being like, delete that immediately, Abdul, because they're sensitive about that kind of stuff.
One of the social media Gestapo coming after.
Well, yeah, and believe me, they're not afraid to.
That was the first thing. The second thing is someone gave us a 5-star rating, I think, on Apple, but not a review. But just let us know. We'll send you a sticker for that as well. We're at 107, so let's keep those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers. Let's pump those numbers up a little bit. Drop us a 5-star review, and we'll read it on the show, and we'll send you a sticker. So please do that. Please do that.
107 rating strong.
Yeah, that was good.
We are better.
I would like 107K. That'd be sweet.
I mean, hey, why stop here?
Yeah. Long show. Just the nature of the beast. It was a blue and white recap, and we had 3 commits, and we had fan questions. So I feel like you kind of set us up for failure. Yeah. So it is what it is. Enjoy it. We'll be back next week. May is going to be weird, just so everybody knows. But we'll talk about that a different time. For now, Sean, are you good?
I am very good.
Good. Well, for Sean Kane, I'm Corey Listokey. You've been listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. Until next week, you guys have a good rest of your week. Cheers, everybody.